Okay, what we are going to do tonight, and Bezrat Hashem, I would assume conclude next week, I hope, is the last bit on the Kuzari, continuing the same thing. It has to still do with Mitzvot Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, the discussion between the Chaver and the king, and the king about the dangers, the lack of dangers, and some of the statements where the Rav will put the king in his place. And he really makes some very cogent statements that are true in many areas. I'm going to give you one example that he doesn't use this for, that I'm about to give, but he basically used the same idea. The night of Shavuot, we know that it's a custom to stay up all night to learn. And very often you'll hear from people, I can't stay up all night. There's no way. I can't even stay up to 10 o'clock to learn something on the night of Shavuot. I'm going to eat. I got to go to sleep. After all, it's going to ruin my chag if I stay up so late. But those same people will stay up to 2, 3 in the morning to watch a football game for the United States, or to go out with their friends and go out and do stuff. And they'll come and wandering at 2 in the morning. But that's okay. But to sit and learn, okay, why would we want to do that? It's too difficult, and then make up excuses. Not that there's anything wrong with staying in bed the night of Shavuot. I missed was it last year or 2 years ago? That was it. I was done. I went to sleep, and it was totally different chag for me. But in any case, we're going to see how that plays out in this particular section tonight. We're in the middle of paragraph 23. If you want to find that, let's see. It should, no, you can tell me what page it is. I keep forgetting to ask in advance. But somewhere probably around 580 what?
589.
589. I was going to say 585. So 589. We're going to pick it up where it says Aval Hasakana. Okay, Aval Hasakana. Now, before we do that, we have to look at a slide to understand something. There is a pasuk in the Torah that tells us the following. Lo tenasu et Hashem Elokechem kasher nisitem b'masa. You should not test God as you tested him in the location known as Masa. I'm not going to go into the whole background at the moment, but what does that mean? You shouldn't test God. So we take a look at this comment here from the Malbim. He says as follows. Lo tenasu, perush hasmag. The smag was the Sefer Mitzvot Gedolot, or Mitzvot Gadol, which was a larger listing and much thicker than the smak, this katan, where it's a listing of all the 613 mitzvot. Perusha smag, shehu azhara shelo yomar. It's a warning that a person should not say, "E'eseh mitzvah." I'm going to do a mitzvah. And I'm going to see if I get a blessing from heaven for doing that mitzvah. You know, I'm going to give tzedakah, and maybe I will then, my crops will grow better. But wait a minute, it says in the first parak of Rosh Hashanah, if a person says, I'm going to give this particular coin to, we're on page 590. Thank you very much. I got a message from Moshe. We're going to be on page 590 in a minute. But if a person says, I'm going to give a coin to tzedakah so that my child should live, assuming that there's a problem, that's a tzaddik. So which is it? You're not allowed to test God and say, if I do the mitzvah, let's see what happens. Or you are supposed to do the mitzvah and say, hey, I'm doing it for that. So Gemara answers, the Malbim answers, Hainu im eino oseh derech nisayon. He's not doing it as a test, meaning he doesn't say, well, I'm going to give tzedakah to my son. I'm going to see if this God really works. It doesn't work like that. But if you say I'm going to do a dafka for a zechut for shlema, that's fine. Because the reason I'm mentioning this is we're going to see why in a minute in the text. But in general, people say, I do it every day. I learn le'ilu nishmat for people. I learn for zechut for shlema. I learn for zechut for shidduch hagun bekarov b'yameinu for a couple people. So like, is that like a test? The answer is no, that's not a test. That's a statement that you're doing this in order to, it should be something auspicious and helpful to this neshama or whatever it might be, not as a test. It's not like, okay, I'm going to daven 520 times. And if God doesn't answer my request, obviously he doesn't care about me anymore, or the answer, he's not, he's kind of out to lunch right now, chas v'shalom. So how does this fit into the text? Let's take a look on page 590. Avala sakana bayam uvayabasha eina nichneset beomro. This is the Rav still speaking. The danger. Remember, we talked about the king was like all upset. Hey, how can you go to Israel? How can you make aliyah? It's all dangerous and everything. We discussed this already. But the danger that one puts himself in when he goes into the sea or the dry land, meaning traveling over the land, that does not fall into the category of don't test God. And we're going to see what this means. Just hang on for a minute. Rather, it's more like a person putting himself in danger by taking a trip and doing business that he hopes to make money from. If in fact a person puts himself in grave danger, or in a great amount of danger than normal, in order that he wants to make some kind of put himself in a situation for an act of like kapara, like for an atonement of some sort, then that's he's allowed to do that, to put himself into some danger. Because he's kind of making a statement on behalf of his neshama, and he's happy with what he's gotten until now. If he puts himself in danger and he survives, he'll give praise to God. And if Hashem takes him because of his sin, then the next world will have to admit whatever happened was for the reason for Hashem did for the reason he did. And he'll believe, again, in the next world, that it was because of that through his death he was receiving atonement. What's he talking about? We're going to see. Hang on one more minute. He said, look, there are times when we put ourselves in danger. Example, a person goes, in those days, there's no such thing as airplanes or cars. Everything was if it were traveling long distances, it was on land, it was horse or whatever mode of transportation. Overseas, obviously, it was by ship. And it's dangerous. It's much more dangerous to cross an ocean than it is to fly or to drive. Much more, in those days especially. So you would do it, and you did it for parnasah. And sometimes people would say, look, I'm even going to go a little above and beyond the area of danger I'm normally going into, because, look, if something happens to me, if something doesn't happen to me, I'll thank Hashem. And if something does, then I'll know it was for a kapara, for my avonot. So a person is allowed to put themselves not in mortal danger on purpose, just to stand in front of a bus and see if the bus doesn't kill them. That's plain stupid. But if you are going to put yourself in danger for parnasah, then what does the Gemara say? What does he say here? He says, the Rav says, I see even more of a reason for this, meaning the idea of making aliyah, of moving to Israel, more so is even less dangerous and even more efficacious than putting yourself in danger by going into a war that's only to show your power and your might. We're not talking about a milchemet mitzvah where you're attacked, or a mercenary. If you have a choice, guy says, let's say a person's a mercenary. Obviously, we don't necessarily have mercenaries among our people too much today, I would imagine. Let's say someone's a mercenary, meaning they're always taking their life in their own hands. They're going to go to battle on behalf of their country or some other country. They just go whoever pays them the money. They put their lives in danger for their parnasa. It's much, much more dangerous than trying to make aliyah. It says you're willing to do that, but you're not willing to put your life in danger to make aliyah. Really? That doesn't make any sense. This is a much lighter danger to put oneself in, rather than go into a permitted war. Again, it's not a milchemet mitzvah, a war where you must go, such as you're attacked, but it's one you want to. He said, just think logically. You're not willing to stay up to learn Torah until 10:30 at night on the night of Shavuot because you're tired. But you're going to stay up to 2 in.the morning to watch the Bears game. The Chicago Bears, because that's what I have to choose, obviously. Okay, makes no sense. Oh, well, it does. It actually makes perfect sense because it's where people's priorities are. It's also what people's interests are. I'm the first to tell you, you could sit there and learning Gemara or Torah or learning whatever it might be. Listen to a shiur at 12 o'clock at night is not the same thing as watching a sports event. It's totally different experience, obviously. But he's saying that, I understand, you're willing to put yourselves in danger. Now, interestingly enough, the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in Mesilat Yesharim, talks about this in a similar fashion. And he says that people will say they're not going to go to shul. He gives extreme examples. They're not going to go to shul to daven. Why? Well, there might be a lion that's going to be on the road. It's going to eat me up. Obviously, an extreme example, but it's saying, look, we're willing to go outside and go to the store. We're willing to go outside and go to town. We're willing to go outside and whatever, to go to school, to work. Oh, but to go to shul, it's dangerous. It might rain on me. I might get wet. Really? So that's his point over here. Let's take a look at what Rav Aviner says about this now. We're going to spend quite a bit of time with him this evening. There. Melech HaKuzar u'melech haver. So the king said to the Rav, what do you need to make aliyah for? Remember, this is what we said last week. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to go across the desert. It's dangerous to cross the water, the ocean. You have to be exceedingly careful with your life. Remember that pikuach nefesh dismisses any mitzvah. It overrides everything. Suddenly, I'll say what he's meaning in a second here. Pikuach nefesh doche Eretz Israel. Pikuach nefesh doche shtachim. Emet sfurim hayinu shezohi ta'ana chadasha. You think that this claim is a new claim? Lo velo, absolutely not. Zohi ta'ana yeshana noshna b'yoshna. This is an ancient, old-fashioned. What's his point here? This is Rav Aviner writing in modern times, obviously. There's something called I had a teacher, my ninth grade Rebbe. He had all these wonderful expressions. And at the time when you're 13 years old and 14 years old, you don't appreciate certain things. And we made fun of it a lot. Ad kedei kach that when we graduated high school, after senior year, after Kita Yud Bet, in our yearbook, we had a page dedicated to the phrases he used. And to this day, I have classmates who we still will use some of those phrases. And one of the phrases he taught us, I don't know if this one was original or not, but he called the Frum Yetzer Hara. What's the Frum Yetzer Hara? Oh, to make aliyah. That's so dangerous. After all, the Torah has a halacha. You have to be exceedingly careful with your life. And pikuach nefesh, how can you make aliyah? How can you travel? So from Yitzhara, Onelo Rabbeinu Yehuda Levi, so Rabbi Yehuda Levi answers, meaning through the Rav's voice, she said, Klale no mesukan. It's not dangerous to go make aliyah. Ve'amata mida lachachi hasocharim. He says, let me prove it to you. How can I prove it to you? Because I'm going to use my frame of reference as people who do business. Hasocharim olchim b'shayarot b'midbar. We know that the socharim, the business people, would go in caravans into the desert, and they would go on a ship in the heart of the sea to go to cross what's called the Medinat Hayam, to go to the other side of the ocean, to another country. What was that for? To make money, to make parnasa. We're talking about businessmen who come from the settled areas. We're not talking about pirates who are looking for adventure. They're going to go sail the seven seas. If that's the case, therefore, it shows us that the benchmark for the danger is very small. Uvemet, al pi halacha, and truthfully, the Shulchan Aruch says, sikun za'ir, a small danger, mutar letzorech parnasa, is permitted. I mean, what does that mean? We know, shalom neda, but we know that people get killed in car accidents every day almost. We know that there's all kinds of things that could happen. A person can get hit by a car, God forbid. A person could trip and fall down a manhole. Anything. So the person doesn't say, "Oh, my might God would be in a car accident. Therefore, I'm going to stay at home. And if someone doesn't bring me work, well, I won't have parnasa." We never do something like that. And therefore, when we enter into we're allowed to enter into some little form of sakana for parnasa. Ubemet, al pi halacha. Sorry, I did that. Omeret HaGemara, the Gemara says, "Ve'elav hu noseh et nafsho, ve'lo sho'alim mitnei ma la'zeh bekevesh, keves v'nitla be'ilan of kevesh. Halo yesh b'chach sakana, el tzorech parnasa mutar." Forget that. It's a quote from the Gemara. I'm not going to get into it. And I'm going to stop with this one page. Let's go to the next page. Davar sheni, another thing, a second thing. Afilu nomar shenisya le'eretz Yisrael mesukenet yoter mi'asakana shenichnasim ba socharim. Even if you want to say that traveling to Israel is a little bit more dangerous than the danger that one puts himself in this case of whether it's the businessman going in the ocean or across the desert. We see that people go out to battle, and that's a very great risk or danger. For various different ideals that people go to battle. That's accepted in the world. There's some things that supersede life. Some guy might go out to battle because he wants to get all these medals on him. In other words, maybe someone might want to go and get all the booty, all the stuff from the war. Both of those are ridiculous. Listen to his words. Listen to this. I think this is absolutely beautiful. Let's assume there's some danger in making aliyah, whether it was in the time of Rabbi Yehuda Levi, or in the time of the 1600s, or in the year 2021, because even nowadays there's still some danger. It's milchemet mitzvah. Let me explain to you what he's saying. As I alluded to already, there's two types of milchama, at least, when we come to the Jewish people. One is called milchemet reshut. Let's say we want to add and make our borders bigger for some reason. We want to expand into Egypt. So we go to war against Egypt and we add a few hundred kilometers of land to Israel. And then, of course, the UN condemns us and everyone crushes us and destroys us and blah, blah, blah. What else is new? Every morning my wife says, "So what's new in the world?" They always have the same answer. I always have the same answer to my wife. I said, they all hate us and they want to kill us. This is true. What is it, Michael?
That we're only allowed to take Egypt up to Nachal Mitzrayim, v'lo me'ever leze.
That's true. Also,
beyond
it's a different story. That's also true. The question is, what is Nachal
By the way, did you
Mitzrayim?
hear
And that also, what is
how the
Nachal
Arabs
Mitzrayim?
interpret our flag?
Right. So the question is,
The Arab interpretation of our flag with the Magen David and two blue stripes,
right,
is connected that we should have the land from the Har Parat at Nachal Mitzrayim.
Right. So the whole issue with Nachal, just parenthetically, of what exactly is Nachal Mitzrayim actually has halachic ramifications for Shemitah, by the way. So we're not going to get into that today. Okay. In any case, he says coming and making aliyah, even overcoming difficulties and potential danger is like a milchama to an extent in quotes, but it's a milchemet mitzvah. I was saying that there are two types of basic war that the Jews can enter into. One, milchemet reshut, which means a permitted war. They want to larchiv the gvul. They want to make bigger borders. Milchemet mitzvah is a milchama, is a war that you go to, is a mitzvah to fight in. It says afilu chatan michupato. Even a chatan from under his chuppah has a chiyuv to go to war. It's when you're attacked. It's the 6-day war. It's the Yom Kippur war. It's the 48 war. It's all these things. Or it could be chomak magim, whatever it might be. Obviously, he's saying, I'm actually intuiting something he didn't say. He's not saying that the actual aliyah is milchemet mitzvah. He says that we know we go out to milchemet mitzvah, and aliyah is much less dangerous than a milchemet mitzvah. I'm adding to what he's saying. He's saying it's ki'ilu. He's also telling us that there's a form of milchemet mitzvah to make aliyah. Bevadai lagur bihuda v'shomron, for sure to live in Yehuda and Shomron, where most of us listening tonight live. Bechevel Katif u'rechov hagai be'ir ha'atika b'Yerushalayim, whether it's in the Chevel Katif or it's in the Rechov Hagai in the Ir Atika, u'sikun namuch yoter milesharet b'yechida kravit. It's a lot less dangerous to live in Malei Adumim than to be a kravi soldier, a warrior in the army. Just like you are allowed to enter into a high risk of danger when it comes to milchemet mitzvah, to conquer the land of Israel, so too are you allowed to enter into a level of risk, not a terrible danger risk, but some, into the land of Israel. Yeshivat haaretz v'yeshuva, also settling the land. Shem snif shel milchemet mitzvah. Now he says it clearly that it is a branch of milchemet mitzvah in order to, when you settle the land. Ubevadai he me'en milchemet mitzvah. This is for sure a form of milchemet mitzvah. Shekeni im lo na'aleh la'aretz v'niyashva. If we don't make aliyah and we don't settle the land, ein imi la'asot milchemet mitzvah. If the Jews aren't here, what is a milchemet mitzvah? It's not when a person lives in New York and they go to Vietnam to fight. I'm mentioning Vietnam because somebody told me today, a young girl, she has an uncle who lives in Hanoi. It's like, to this day, as a kid that grew up during the Vietnam War, it just still sounds very weird to me. Okay, fine, that's my own stupidity in my head. But if but that's not a milchemet mitzvah. Milchemet mitzvah is Jews having to defend the land of Israel. So if the Jews don't settle the land, who's going to make a milchemet mitzvah to begin with? The Gam. No one's going to be able to watch over anything we accomplish and then we are able to gain. So who's going to protect it? Therefore, there is a derivative form of milchemet mitzvah by doing aliyah. Hakshara lemilchemet mitzvah. Ayushami lomed shemuteret kniyat hakarkaot b'Shabbat b'kibush Yericho shenechbesha b'Shabbat. I think I mentioned this to you, or I mentioned it a few weeks ago in one of the shiurim we gave on mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. The Rambam tells us it's based on the Gemara, and which is based on, as you see on a pasuk in Sefer Yoshua, that if a goy tells you he's ready to sell his land on Shabbat, I mean, you can't do the writing or anything, but the goy can finalize the deal with you and sign the documents on Shabbat to transfer the land to you. Shiva Yamim Sababu. So how do they know this? Okay, so he goes on and he tells us the rest. I'm not going to get into that now. Okay, so this is for afterwards. This is a cute story. Okay, let's go back into the text a little bit. Continuing. Oh no, actually, I do want to read this one. Sorry. Okay, this is very rarely in his commentary in Kuzari does Rav Aviner tell a personal story. We've been doing this for 5 years, whatever it is now, and this is only one of the few times I've seen a personal story. He says he once went to Canada in order to organize a group of people who were going to be making aliyah. I spoke with each one planning to make aliyah. And I discussed with each one. I went into depth a little bit and asked, I investigated what was their job, where do they expect to go when they went to Israel, how are they going to make out there. I gave them chizuk, I gave them encouragement, and I went home. So he's, like I said, if you can hear Rav Aviner speaking almost, if you have never heard him, he's got a great sense of humor. He once told us, he was here in Maleh Dumim for Shabbat, visiting his brother, and he was speaking about his experience in I think it was the Yom Kippur War. No, it would have been whatever it was, one of the wars. And he was talking about how he was somewhere on a mountaintop protecting the land. He says, not one bad guy came near me. He starts hiking up his pants. They were so scared of my 40 kilo of weight that I was protecting the land of Israel. They were so scared, they all ran away from me. He's got a very good sense of humor. But he's saying, okay, it's like you can hear him say, I went there, I talked to them, I gave them divrei yidud, I gave them all this encouragement, and then I went home. After another year, I was sent again for the same goal. This time he was going not to talk about in general with Aliyah, people interested, but to go meet a new garin. What's a garin? It's a nucleus of people that decide that there's a group they're going to make Aliyah. When I got there, I found the same exact people that I saw the year before. I was in shock. You're still here? I talked to you last year. What's going on? They said to me, we were told we don't need to make aliyah after all. Shalti lama. I asked, why would you not make aliyah? Who told you should make aliyah? They said, Barav min New York v'amar a rabbi came from New York and said, Ben kovachol, what me'atkat yavo Mashiach. Don't worry about it. Soon enough, the Mashiach is going to be here anyways. And then all of us will go on Aliyah together with him. So these people managed to succeeded to make me angry. Therefore I said to them, let me tell you a joke. A woman came home from shul. She was like just pouring tears. And her husband was in shock. Shaindel Shali, Lamat Bocha. My dear Shaindel, why are you crying? I wonder why he chose the name Shaindel. He mishtaneket. Harav amar shemashiach magia. The rabbi just said in shul, the Mashiach is coming. So why are you crying? Hi, what have we done recently? We bought a house. And look what we did. We got a job for our son. And we were able to get a place in the university for our daughter. And so what a waste. Look at all those things we did. We got the job, we got the house. What a waste of money that was and time. So her husband calmed her down and says, Shaindel, tanuach datech, relax. Many bad decrees were decreed on Am Yisrael. And that the Gdolim had lots of prayers. Baruch Hashem itbadlu agzerot. And don't worry, the bad gzera was canceled. Gama pam, this time also. Itpalu rabbanim itpalu agzerot. So too this time the rabbis will also daven, and they'll also erase this terrible decree. Meaning that there won't come, the Mashiach won't come. God forbid he should come, because look at how much we spend on the house in Teaneck, how much money we spent on our car in Chicago. Look at what a waste of money that would be. God forbid the Mashiach should come. Anachnu kan tzochakim. Here we laugh. Avosham there, ish lo tzachak. No one laughed. Hem yerchinu roshehem bevusha. They lowered their head, they bowed their heads in embarrassment. They knew that everything I was saying was right. Good intentions are not enough. Now, this is not the same thing as we talked about a couple of weeks ago when we talked about intentions. I said a couple of weeks ago, there's a very big difference between, I really should make Aliyah versus I should make Aliyah. I have a general plan. I'm going to do some investigation. I'm going to try to figure it out. There's a huge difference, and Rav Aveder himself said this. What we're talking about here is, I really should make Aliyah, but we'll see what happens. It's a very big difference. It's a cute story. It's a sweet story. It has a very good, very powerful message, very strong message, I think. Let's take a look now.
You should have come to London in the beginning of the 80s, where I was a member of Garin Mitzoi. And I was in the second year group. And the people of 82 went on Aliyah, and I went in 83, and I think there were 1 or 2 year groups after that in 84 and 85. And also, by the way, until the Shkia, I had a double Aliyah anniversary, because I left London on the 26th of October, which is today. And I arrived in the early morning on Kaf B'Cheshvan, which was also today before Shkia.
That's funny.
So it was my double 38th Aliyah anniversary.
Mazal tov,
tonight.
Mazal tov. Beautiful. Mazal tov. Very, very nice. Thank you
so
for sharing
nice that the shirt, the dafka you're giving this shirt.
Aliyah, no, that's beautiful. Thank you for the connection.
Right.
Paragraph 24 in the book. Amar Kuzari. The perspective that Kuzari is about to ask the rabbi is one that resonates probably in all of our ears from people that live in Chutz La'aretz, from people who justify to themselves. Again, there are people who have a legitimate reason to stay in Chutz La'aretz. I'm not denying it. I'm talking about the people who have no legitimate reason, and not only no legitimate reason, they also are very, very entrenched in a world they will never leave, unfortunately. By the way, even after Mashiach comes, in my opinion. Amar Kuzari. Before, when you're living in Galut, you're living in the diaspora, you chose freedom. And I see you now, Shata Rotze Losif, Avdut V'chovot. I see now you want to add on to yourself. I want responsibilities and servitude. That you're going to be responsible to do when you live in Israel. You don't have to do any of those mitzvot here. What's he talking about? We're going through right now. Shemitah, Shumot, Masrot, Orla, even though Orla applies also in Chutz La'aretz, Neta Revai, all the mitzvot atluot ba'aretz, and all the mitzvot that can only be done here. What do you need the headache for? Please give me a break. What is it you need that for? As he says here in Rav Aviner, so one is 3 words. Why do you have to pile on more problem on top of more weight and more weight? Just stay here. Are you going to be able to keep Torah mitzvot? You can keep Torah mitzvot. You're going to do Tzon Hashem, you can do it Tzon Hashem. You can be Hashem. What do you need more for? That's his claim. Next paragraph. Amar Chaver. The Chaver said, Aval ani mevakesh achairut. Listen, this is amazing. Let me stop. Let me stop before we read that just a second. I think I had a more or less unique experience when it came to the rabbinate in the United States, because I had a wonderful, fantastic relationship with the shul. In the 10 years I was there, the only divisiveness took place shortly before I left, and nothing to do with me, thankfully. It had to do with different ideas of the future of the shul, which sadly is dying now. It was a great shidduch, truly was, and I was blessed. On top of it, I was blessed because it could have been very difficult, because the rabbi emeritus, who was actually my rabbi growing up, was still in the shul, and he sat front and center when I davened when I was there too. But we had a great relationship. He never stepped on my toes. I went to him for advice, and he willingly gave what he could to me. So it was great. It really was a wonderful relationship. And I didn't experience, here and there, look, in 10 years, you make mistakes, you do things, and you get into arguments with people here and there. But Gadol, it was 98% was really very wonderful. But that's the exception, unfortunately. I know of countless cases, including the rabbi who was before me, there was a rabbi for a few years who took over after the rabbi emeritus had first retired. It was a stormy relationship. And unfortunately, that's very true for a lot of rabbis. Not all. Some have been very successful. Some have been very rewarding positions. Take principles of school. Look at people who are involved in federation. When you work for a board of directors, when you work for a congregation, when you work for a Jewish organization as a leader, as I think it was Golda Meir, who said that the difference between, I forgot, she was talking to the president of the United States, something about how she's a prime minister over 6 million prime ministers. So everyone thought that they're the boss. Forgot the exact quote. And it's a form of avdut. It's a form of servitude when a person is in such a position, because they're not really the boss. They're not really in charge. They're at the whim sometimes of their board or their organization. Look at what's going on right now with finding a new head for the Jewish agency. It's interesting that I would love to be a fly on the wall in those discussions. But in any case, listen to what the Chaver says. So the Rav says back to him in paragraph 25. You want to talk real cherut? You want to talk freedom? I need to be freed from public servitude. I tried to fulfill the wishes of the public, and I'm not able to do it. And even if I tried my entire life, and I was able even to accomplish this, it wouldn't be beneficial to me. I mean to say, avdut b'nei adam uvakashat ritzonam. I cannot see myself serving people and their desires the rest of my life. Va'avakesh avdut acher. I seek out a different form of avdut or servitude. something I can accomplish with little effort. And it helps me in this world and the next world. And it is Retzon Elokim. I want to be freer to do the will of God. Service of Hashem is the true freedom. It's taking us and telling us something critically important. The truth is, this is true not just about what is referred to as koilish work, which is public service to Am Yisrael, but it's true about many other types of jobs and positions. There's this expression, the rat race. Yes, there's a rat race in Israel also. Yes, there are businesses. Yes, there are difficulties. I'm not saying this is utopia. This is far from utopia. I said many, many years ago, and I've said it many, many times, this is the promised land, not the perfect land. It isn't. It's far from perfect. But for the Jew, it's the perfect land, by the way. There are issues. There are difficulties. And I've said this in my own personal life, and I know some of you must feel the same way, that even if you have difficulties in Israel, you can't grow as a Jew like you can in Israel, in Chutz La'aretz like you can in Israel. It's impossible. We've discussed this before also. And this is what he wants. The Kuzari, the king, is looking and saying, you're taking on extra work, more servitude, more avodah. And he's saying it's exactly the opposite. I'm taking on less work. I also am able, he's saying that the quote work I get to do is the service of Hashem, and it gives me more opportunities in the land of Israel. I've used the example before many times about being a copier salesperson. If you were given the choice between selling copiers, you're the salesperson. And you're given the choice between being the salesperson for copiers in Ottumwa, Iowa, or in Manhattan, which would you choose? Because you have much more opportunity in Manhattan than you do in Ottumwa, Iowa, obviously. Same thing that the Chaver is telling us here is that I want this avodah. I want this work, but it's the service of Hashem and not serving the people. I want to share with you a chiddush I had, a novel approach to something. And I was told, I said it here once publicly in Shul, I think it is Bar Torah, and people liked it, but I haven't seen it anywhere. By Ashkenazim on Shabbat, before Musaf, there is the Yukum Purkan. Yukum Purkan, the last paragraph says, it says whoever works in public action, they get themselves in the community, Hashem should reward them, etc. But listen to the words. V'chol mi she'oskim, which is grammatically incorrect. She'chol mi she'osik, whoever's involved. It should be chol mi she'osik, not chol mi she'oskim. And yes, there's a way.
Singular and plural. It can be okay. It's okay.
Say again.
Me is or singular or plural, depending on the context.
Correct. So that's the easy answer. That's the easy answer. Say it could be either way in the context. So that could be considered plural. But I'd like to say something different.
Avimelech asked Avraham Avinu in the parasha last week.
Yes.
Ma ele. Ma. Ele. He's talking about the kvasim.
Correct. So you can't, right. The questions, mi ma, that's not mi ma mu.
Me or ma, it can be who or he or him,
right,
or ele, or ze, or zot.
Right. However, having said that, I'd like to say something else. There are people, and I'm sure you know people like this, whether it's here or in Chutz La'aretz. It could be in the shul, it could be in the school, it could be a local chesed organization, that they seem like they're superhuman. They do everything. They're involved in everything. Everything they do, the more they have, the more they can do. And I like to say that chol mi she'oskim, by using the word me in the singular, is that they're a singular person, but they act like they're oskim, that they're multiple people in multiple organizations doing many things. And that kind of person even deserves even more reward. Let's take a look at one more paragraph. It's 2 lines. It's Kaf Vav. And we'll look at one more slide, and that's going to be it for tonight. And then Bezrat Hashem, we're going to wrap it up next week with a conclusion to the book. Kaf Vav, 26. Amar Kuzari, kasher ta ma'amin b'chol ma shezacharta kvar yada el matzpuncha. He tries again. The Kuzari, the king, just doesn't want to give up. He said, I don't understand. I'm going to try one more thing. God knows You want all this. Rahmana liba bai. He even quotes right back to the Rav, something that the Rav has said to him, which is an expression which we've heard before, and it's mentioned many times in Gemara. Rahmana liba bai, which means the Hashem wants your heart. Hashem knows what you're thinking and your plans and your ideas. He reveals that which is hidden. What's he telling? Let's take a look at this last slide. Ata, now, Yeshna ta'ana chadasha b'fi Kuzari. There's one new claim that the Kuzari is making. I see that your intentions are good. Ata omnam idealist gadol. You're truly a big idealist. Oved Hashem gadol. You're a great Eved Hashem, servant of God. Mekayem mitzvot gadol. You're a great person who does mitzvot. Hein dai bazet. Isn't that enough? Dai b'chavana. Your intentions, your ideas, your thoughts, that should be sufficient. Kavana tova. We already know there's a concept that if I have in mind an idea that I really want to do something and I don't do it, Hashem makes it as if I did it. He explains. For example, I really want to do the visiting someone who's sick. But there was an accident, so I couldn't get there. So it was a good intention. We see that the ikar, the main thing, is one's intention. He's twisting the logic is so twisted here. Since your entire intention is to serve God, there's ikuvim, there's things you're getting in the way. It's like the car accident that prevented you from doing bikur cholim. You don't have to go to Israel. It's good just to have the intention. Oh, I really want to make aliyah, but El Al doesn't fly the day I need to go, so forget it. You don't have to go out of your way to move to Israel and do Trumot Masrot. It's enough to have the intention. I really wish I could. You don't even need the Beit HaMikdash. It's good enough to have the intention. After all, if you look in many Sidurim, it says, when you daven, you're supposed to have an intention. You're davening towards Eretz Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael towards Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim towards the Har HaBayit towards the Kodesh Kodashim, blah, 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 blah. See, it's all kavanah. It's all your intention. The answer to that is, that's foolish. Havel, havalim, hakol havel. It's all absolute zero. There's a big difference, though. I want to make this very clear. Still, there's a very big difference between a person having intention and thought they really want to make aliyah, but there's problems. They're the only kid there, and the parent is sick, or they truly, that what they do is so critical in their community that it cannot be replicated by somebody else. There are instances where yes, but saying I should be. Remember I told you my story last week about when people came up to me and said, when I talked about our aliyah, I really should make aliyah, but blah blah blah. Those perceived ikuvim, those perceived blockages for making aliyah are exactly that, perceived. And no, it's not enough just to have the intention. Next week, what we're going to do is where the Rav is going to respond with this concept of that the difference between kavanah or intention and actual action, and then the closing of the book, literally and figuratively. We'll wrap it up, have a couple comments. And then, Bezrat Hashem, the goal is towards approximately the week of the 21st of November. Hopefully, all goes well. I'm going to, and I'll advertise it in advance. We're going to move into the book of Tanya, which I've been looking forward to for a very long time. Been preparing it now for a year and 3 quarters, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with everybody. Bezrat Hashem. So in the meantime, have a good evening, and Kol Tuv. Everything should be well for everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Avram. Toda. Good night.